Welcome to this Tybootha presentation, where we will dive into the life and work of a very remarkable woman and Christian mystic, Bridget of Sweden, or Birgitta Bergersdottir, an otherworldly legacy.
Absolutely. A really compelling figure.
And the material we're exploring today was prepared by James Michael. We certainly hope it will be published soon by Tybootha Publications.
Good stuff. And people can find his other work?
Yes, you can find more of James Michael's work on his author page. It's https://www.amazon.com, author James Michael.
Great.
So today, Brigitta of Sweden, born around, 1303, into Swedish nobility.
Right. And you have to picture the scene, medieval Europe, lots of political and religious, turmoil. And into this comes Birgitta.
And she becomes this major figure, mystic, reformer, visionary.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how early these intense religious visions started for her. These weren't just, vague feelings. They were described as direct personal encounters.
Really shaping her path from early on.
Definitely. They weren't something separate from her life. They were her spiritual path, fundamentally.
And it's interesting because she wasn't initially living a secluded life. She married a nobleman, Ulf Gudmundson, also quite pious, apparently.
Yes, and they had, 8 children?
8 children,
Yeah.
which is just, wow. And even with all that, raising a large family, her deep devotion didn't waver. It actually intensified.
It really shows that, spirituality back then wasn't always about locking yourself away in a monastery. For Birgitta, at least for a long time, the divine was right there in the midst of family life.
But then, after Ulf died, there was a shift.
A major shift. That's when she dedicated herself completely, fully to religious life. And that really paved the way for her biggest contributions, you could say.
Like founding her own religious order.
Exactly. The Order of the Most Holy Savior, we know it as the Bridgettine Order, founded in Vadstena, Sweden.
And it had that very distinctive structure, didn't it? With both monks and nuns.
Yes. Quite unique. Both living in the same monastery, though separated, and crucially, under the authority of an abbess.
What was the thinking there?
Well, according to Birgitta, it came from her divine revelations. The focus was really on communal prayer, a life centered completely on Christ, and it caught on.
It seems so.
Yeah.
Vadstena, the mother house, became a huge pilgrimage site, right? Even after her death.
Oh, absolutely. It became a really significant spiritual center, shows the power of her vision.
But maybe even more lasting, perhaps, are her writings, the Revelationae Celestis.
Her heavenly revelations, huge. Over 700 visions messages. She believed they came straight from Christ, the Virgin Mary, various saints.
And these weren't just like personal diary entries for her.
Not at all. She felt they were messages for the entire church, a call for reform, for spiritual deepening. There's a real theological depth there, but also this moral urgency.
You mentioned reform. She wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, was she?
Not in the slightest. The sources show her calling out kings, popes, clergy, condemning greed, clerical immorality. You needed real conviction for that.
Where did that boldness come from?
From her absolute certainty in her visions, that prophetic authority she felt she'd been given. But it's important. It wasn't just condemnation. Alongside the warnings, there was always this profound sense of God's love, his mercy, especially related to Christ's suffering that was central for her. And that vision of mercy alongside judgment really influenced devotional practices later on.
Then later in life, she moves to Rome.
Right. She spent her final years in Rome. Big change.
What was the focus there?
2 main things, really. Pushing for the Pope to return to Rome from Avignon, a huge issue at the time, the Avignon papacy, and seeking official church approval for her Bridgettine Order.
Big goals. Did she succeed during her lifetime?
Not fully on the Pope's return immediately, though she added her voice to the pressure. She worked tirelessly on getting the order approved. She actually died in Rome in 1373.
But her influence certainly didn't end there. Her body was taken back to Vadstena.
Correct. And the recognition came pretty fast, actually. Canonized as a saint in 1391.
Which isn't that long after her death, relatively speaking.
No, it shows the impact she'd already made. And then much more recently, Pope John Paul II named her one of the patron saints of Europe in 1999.
Wow. Patron saint of Europe. That really speaks to her legacy, doesn't it? Unity, reform, spiritual renewal.
Exactly. She remains this towering figure, Christian mystic, medieval spirituality powerhouse. Her revelations are this incredible blend of deeply personal faith and this unavoidable call to conscience for everyone else.
So looking back, we have this noble woman, wife, mother, who experiences these profound visions, founds an order, challenges leaders, and leaves behind these powerful writings.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? How can those intensely personal spiritual experiences, those private encounters, translate into such significant public calls for change? Brigitta's life is just a fascinating case study for that very dynamic.
Be sure to subscribe to Tybootha to get more videos like this, awaking your heart in light and love.